Okay, we're recording.
Okay, welcome to the January 15th, 2026 meeting of the Policy Subcommittee. I'd like to begin by moving approval of our minutes from the joint meeting of Policy and Curriculum back on November 18th. Do I have a second for those?
Sure.
Thanks, Jesse. Mariah, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jesse?
Yes.
And I vote yes. And then I'd like to also move approval of minutes for our own policy meeting on November 18th as well.
So moved.
Thank
Or
you.
seconded, I guess. You want to
Seconded, yes.
Okay, I think Mariah got there first this time.
Bert.
Jesse, how do you vote?
That's on the November 18th, yes.
Yeah. And Mariah?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Okay, so that brings us to the policy drafts that we're discussing. So the two items on the agenda today are instructional materials, which Jesse has prepared a draft of for us. And again, I apologize for the cancellation last time when we were supposed to have discussed this. And then the other policy is fiscal management, which Mariah has prepared for us. And despite the order on the agenda, let's do fiscal management first before Mariah's voice gives out.
Are the minutes are the 2 minutes that we just approved going to be on the civic clerk side, Betsy, because they're not there now?
I don't post them with
Oh,
like tonight's meeting. I wait for you to approve them, then I post them with the 11/18 meeting. Does that make sense? Where they
so they'll
belong?
be, oh, um,
Only after we
I'm not
approve them do they get
Okay.
posted at all. Right?
well, they get posted, I guess. You post them back to the original meeting. Is that what you're
Yes,
saying?
exactly, right. And I'll do that after tonight's meeting once they're approved.
Okay.
I see. Okay. Now I understand. It's a different process. Thank you.
Betsy, should I pull the draft up on my screen or do you want to pull it up on your
I'm happy to
screen?
pull it up. I have it ready if you'd like.
Okay. Yeah, if you don't mind.
Sure.
By way of intro on the fiscal policy, so as far as I know, there are at least three versions kind of in the background of this one, right? So there's the existing policy, a section in the middle. There's the version that we were working on back when Sam Rippin was the administration and finance deputy. And then there's also the MASC draft that Mariah, I think you referred to.
I think I even created 2 drafts. I think this is my third go round, if I'm not mistaken, of redoing this. But I just like to think it's like practice makes perfect, and I'm getting better and better at that.
Okay, yeah. So do you mind like just outlining what the relationship is between?
I will do all of that. I was going to do a whole intro before we even got into this. Okay. So just to give some background, this had been on my to-do list for years, and as Andy is alluding to, I had gotten quite far into the second time around with Sam Rippin. That was before what year was that? Summer of 2022, I think. And then Sam left the district, and we had an interim finance person, and then Susan came in and asked to have some time to become familiar with the district's finances and practices before we redid the policy. And so we've been waiting. And then in the meantime, the MOA was signed with the town as well, that we would at least report on the policy status in March, in 2 months. And so, like I said, I've done this at least once and I think twice before. And this time, though, I went at it with the perspective of that, Andy, you've actually sort of helped me hone over the past couple of years, which is to make sure that policy is not procedure, and that it should, where we need procedure, unless we think something really needs to be said, we should essentially direct staff to create appropriate protocols, practices, manuals, etc. And so that was really clarifying for me. The reason that we wanted to do this was because most of our finance policy actually hadn't been updated since the early 80s. So in 2022, I was very excited because it was going to be the 40-year anniversary and we would get to update it. But we're getting there. And so, of course, the policy that we have predates ed reform. It predates a lot of I think it predates the Municipal Modernization Act. It doesn't align with current practices or sort of state mandates that exist. So what I did was I used the MASC policy skeleton, or I can't remember what, like a template basically that they provide. And I adapted it in certain areas, as you'll see, and I'll walk through this to reflect some of the specific Brookline language. And so we can walk through it, but before we do, I would like us to just spend a little bit of time on this front page. So you can see that the first area is goals, that's D1. Then D2 is the budget, and it goes through overview, deadlines, planning, budget adoption, budget transfer. So it talks about all of that. Then there's a section on gifts, grants, and proposals. Then there is a section on federal funds, section on authorized signatures, bonded employees, and then a section on reporting, auditing, and then purchasing, and then payments, expense reimbursements, and then D12, 13, 14, and 15 are not in the MASC manual. However, they are in the PSB manual, and I chose to bring them forward. And so, but with that said, I'm going to talk more about 15 when we get there. So why don't we, do you have any questions so far, or should I keep going?
I think you can keep going. I
Okay.
like the order of topics very much. I think it made me, because it kind of reflects like decreasing amount of school committee involvement in these various aspects for the most part, right? So
Yeah.
the big things that we had to deal with sort of come at the beginning.
Well, and the funny thing is that, I would say funny, Betsy, do you mind scrolling up a little bit? 12, 13, 14, 15, those are current things that we have, but actually it's interesting because I think to your point, like those are in our existing policy and they get a little bit more into the weeds, which is really, I think, the problem with our existing policy overall. However, I thought these were important things to include, and I'll get into that when we get there. So if you don't mind just keeping on going, Betsy, Andy, I'm thinking at this time, I want to sort of go through and give big picture, and then we can go back and talk about words if we have time. Does that make
Yeah,
sense? Okay.
I think that makes sense. Especially so Susan hasn't reviewed this thing as a whole yet, right?
Right. As far as I know, I don't know if she has, but I don't.
Yeah. So I mean, before we do wordsmithing, I think
Yeah.
she at least should take a look at it.
Okay, so let's keep going. So as you see, there's the first section is fiscal management goals. Now, the pink words that you see here, the track changes adds, those are actually from our current, and now sometimes I tweak the wording, but I'll say that the bulk of this text is actually from our current policy. And I really liked it because it really talks about the advocacy and sort of thinking about what goes into the different considerations as you think about local versus state versus federal versus philanthropic funds. So I added that back into here. Keep going, Betsy, please. So then we talk about the annual budget. I deleted out the paragraph about the foundation budget because to me, the foundation, like PSB's budget, I mean, I guess we could keep it, but the foundation
This is not a district there where we have to work.
exactly. We're not like
That's
we're not operating at foundation budget level.
Yeah.
So to me, it was sort of something that was not really needed to be discussed, but it's also, it doesn't hurt us. It just doesn't really contribute.
Mhm.
And I added in something about the budget guidelines, as you can see there. I added in references to the town bylaw, which MASC asks you to sort of make this specific to your municipality, so I did. Then there's 2.2. The current budget, the current policy actually lists the fiscal year, and the MASC one doesn't, but I actually liked putting it in there. I just thought it was helpful. And so then I sort of talked a little bit about the timelines. As you can see, I mentioned the budget guidelines again, talking about timing. I tweaked this last paragraph about dates are assigned because we're typically submitting the budget to staff for consideration by town meeting, and not necessarily to the select board and advisory. So we can talk about that, but I just sort of tweaked it for our local timelines and specifics of how Brookline operates. Then down in budget planning, and keep going, it sort of just talks about the superintendent being in charge, budget adoption, and basically it clarifies that the budget's adopted, but it's the bottom line goes to town meeting, which we all know. I referenced the town bylaw on town meeting, which is 2.1. So you'll see that in there. Budget transfer authority. This one is
Can I
yeah.
stop you there for a second?
Yeah.
Because I just did have a question in D24, the budget
Yeah.
adoption procedures. The thing about cost centers will be agreed upon by the committee and administration. I guess I just don't know much in this area. I think like what is it that we treat as a cost center? Because this becomes important again later because transfers within cost centers don't have to come back to the school committee, right? So
Right.
this is the bottommost level at
So
which we
cost
currently
centers
engage.
are the schools, the 10 schools, and the offices in the like Office of Teaching and Learning. It's basically the sections that you see of the budget. So Office of Teaching and Learning,
Oh.
Student Services, etc. Those are the formal cost centers of the budget.
Okay, I see. So it's like it's not. I don't recall that we have to sit down every year and agree on what the cost centers will be. It's just that's understood to be those divisions. Okay.
Right, those are the cost centers.
Okay.
And then the other area I want to say, like, if we were to look at, like, I'm making this up, but salary, transportation, I want to say those are called cost categories, but I can't remember I'm pretty sure they're called categories as opposed to cost centers. Anyway, this is something that we could consider about, and there's more on this budget transfer authority that I think is important. As you say, like the adjustments are presented, and there's more to say as we get to the next section here, because the next section I did depart somewhat dramatically from what MASC represents, because I don't think MASC's draft is very functional. So can you scroll down a little bit further, Betsy? So I want to look at this deleted text. So basically the MASC text, which I deleted, says that essentially the school committee has to approve requests of transfers before they can happen. And I changed that so that if you scroll up, Betsy, we would approve them. No, not down, up. Sorry. Yep, that they're presented in the quarterly and annual reports. So this is a choice, but to me, it made sense that we would not have staff have to wait for us to vote these, but that they could make them as they see fit. And they, just like we do position control report, they would essentially be presenting to us the transfers between cost centers that they've made, which is more or less what already happens. I mean, Susan presents to us in the quarterly report, like, we're doing this is changing around, but it would be required.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I just think it's more functional for staff to not have to seek permission, and unless it was mandated by state law or something, which it's not. So and then number 2 there,
Where did the 10,000 come from then?
this one I want to say came from I'm pretty sure that's in our current policy, and I thought it was actually good. Like, basically,
No.
I mean, I don't know if it's 10,000, we could increase it to 50,000, we could, whatever that number is that the committee wants is fine. But this idea of there's some threshold at which we get to approve something before it happens.
Yeah, I guess that, the good thing about, the good thing about number 2 though, is that what we're saying is that any program that costs something, which 10,000's a pretty big, could be a big program depending on what it costs per person or student or teacher. The only thing is if it was under that level, we wouldn't know anything about it. It wouldn't even have to be in the number 1 because
we could know about it. We could know about it because they could just tell us about it. It's the question of approval is required before they can spend money on it.
Yeah, so I'm saying is if it's new,
Uh-huh.
or a project that we didn't know about. I think the word new is applying to both, right? A new program or a new project.
Yes.
Right. So, excuse me, I gotta take this.
Well, I don't think we need to wordsmith this one right now. I think we can keep going, but just in general, I think that that's one area, which is like this whole budget transfer authority is something that I think is worth people thinking about. if they're comfortable with the idea of post-fact adjustment transfer approval, which is more or less what we do now. And then this question of what's the threshold for approval? I'm just gonna wait for Jesse for a minute, if that's okay with you, Andy. Are you back, Jesse?
I am now. Thank you very much. Yeah, that was
Yeah,
a
sure.
critical call. Okay.
Sure, no problem. So going on to the next one, this is about gifts, grants, and proposals. As I mentioned before, but just to remind you, if the text isn't edited, it's the MASC default, and so you can see the things that I've added. Most of this first section of it, I really didn't touch very much. And then D3.1 is almost word for word our current language from our policy. And this one also is from our current policy. Again, almost word for word. For most of these, I might have done like a little bit of cleanup wordsmithing, but not much. So that's, again, all from our current policy. And then just one note, Betsy, do you mind, where this says scratched out, it says the federal grant manual or the state and federal grant manual. The note here says the approval is not subject to school committee administration. I actually, if you just scroll back up, I just put that this document is not subject to school committee approval in the text itself. I didn't know why we would put it in the note that might be deleted. So if you go up further, Betsy, to the very top of D3, keep going. Right there, above D3.1, the very last line there where it says this written document. Yeah, I just put it there. I don't know if we need to say that, but I thought because there's some question about, we've been talking in other contexts about what kinds of things are school committee approval versus not, it doesn't hurt to put it in. So if you keep going to D4 is where I think we're at now. Yeah, this is the federal funds supplement, not supplant. I did not edit this at all, as you can see. For the cross-reference, we don't have, at least that I could find, a compensatory education policy. So I meant to delete that, but I forgot to delete it. But maybe we have one too, and I just couldn't find it in our policy manual. So something to, and I didn't go look at the source text on the MASC website. Then authorized signatures, we do have an existing policy, and you can see this is a little bit of a combination of the existing policy and the MASC policy. And it basically just memorializes some of the things that we've already said, like the chair of finance does this, does one thing, chair of capital does another thing, etc. D6 bonded employees, that is also it's exactly the MASC language, and we have, I believe, a bonded employees section also, and this is pretty similar. So that's that. Fiscal accounting and reporting. Two things I want to highlight here. You can see that most of this is the MASC language. I put a threshold of reporting in, not because I think staff won't do that, but just so that it's in the policy, should anyone question it. Then the one thing that is new, well, it's not new, but we aren't doing it, is that it says the annual report should include information on all investments held on behalf of PSB by the town of Brookline. And this is including the available funds from investment capital, et cetera, scholarships and prizes. Now, this is actually in our current policy and hasn't been happening. And I think that it would be very valuable, though, because if we consider the case of the scholarship that we've been talking about in the past year that had accrued millions of dollars, but we didn't know about that because no one's reported it to us until recently. It would be really great to know what's being held on the town side as well as within our PSB accounts.
Who on the town side has that knowledge at their fingertips?
Sorry, I didn't catch the beginning.
Who on the town side has that knowledge at their fingertips?
Well, I mean, I hesitate to say that anyone using Munis has anything at their fingertips, but I believe it's under Lincoln's purview.
Okay.
Yeah. He was the one who, like, at least for the scholarship we're talking about, he was the one who was talking with us about it. So,
Mhm. Okay.
let me see. I put a little bit of just our Brookline specifics into this audit one, as you can see. And I think I referenced if you scroll down, Betsy, I referenced, yes, the appropriate bylaw, which is 3.5 for the audit committee. But as you can see, most of that is MASC, purchasing. There is quite a large section on purchasing in our document, but I believe it predates. This was one where I believe that everything we have essentially predates both the town and schools purchasing being combined, and also predates like a lot of the current state regulations and so forth. And so essentially I left it minimally. I only modified it minimally. The one exception is I included a section that you can see here on contract review by school committee. Contract authorization, I should say. And this, I believe, if I recall correctly, I'm like 199% sure that that's from our current policy manual. And I can't remember though if the contract amount is, but I actually think there's something really valuable in understanding and approving the large contracts. And I know we approved some of them, and I don't know why. So like the transportation contracts we approve, and I'm not sure exactly if that's a function of the number of years it is or some other reason. But anyways, and we can talk about the dollar amount, just like we can talk about that earlier dollar amount too, the transfer. We don't need to do that now, but this question of, does school committee want to approve contracts? Procurement requirements. One question I actually had about this entire procurement section was, because Brookline partners with the town on procurement, I thought that there was a good chance for much of this that actually we should essentially refer to the town of Brookline procurement processes. But I didn't get the chance to talk with Susan beforehand to essentially say, does this whole section become negated by purchasing requirements, et cetera, that are promulgated on the town side? So it might be that a lot of this actually just needs to go away. But there still could be things like, again, the school committee specifics, like if we wanted to do approval of contracts. But for now, I left it exactly as MASC had it. If you can keep going, Betsy.
You're saying there that if the procurement policy that the town has is similar enough, we might just join with theirs kind of thing, refer to theirs.
What I'm saying is, as far as I know, PSB's procurement is overseen by the town's procurement officer. I know Bella is here. Bella, am I representing that semi-accurately? Do you know off the top of your head?
I was just writing you. I was thinking for this section, you might
Excuse me.
consider just saying that it needs to be compliant, and then you cite the sections because they do get updated. So I do agree with you if you get too specific and then it would constantly have to be updated. So you might refer to the sections.
Yeah, and I think this area in
And-
particular was when I wanted to talk with Susan about, like, to your point, Bella, their MASC, as you can see, there's a lot of details in here, but I'm not sure if really they live on the PSB side versus the town side. And to your point,
Well-
Bella, I'm not sure that we want to get into the weeds. So
We're obligated independently. So whatever we do, whatever the town does and we do, it should be consistent because we should all be doing it the way we're supposed to. So I actually think there's not much leeway about the rules. The rules are the rules. But because we do a lot of the processes on our own, we have to make sure we can't just defer to the town. The town requires us to have licensed people as well, and we train together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, this whole procurement section is probably the one that I felt it definitely needed the most staff input on.
Okay.
And we'll get there.
All
So
right.
then this is payment. And again, it's pretty like it's basically the MASC. I just forgot to, I wrote per section D XXX. I forgot to go back and correct it to the right reference. It's D5. I fixed it down below, but I didn't fix it up above. And then expense reimbursements is pretty, it's basically what it was from MASC, and it seems pretty reasonable. Disposal of property. So this is the first one that is coming from the PSB policy. And I think it is a good thing to say these things, and so I left it in as is. That's all I'll say about that. If you can keep going, Betsy. So cash in school buildings, we had this now. I'm actually unclear if currently, like post-COVID, there are even petty caches in the buildings. And this was something I wanted to ask about. Bella, do you happen to know if there's petty cash currently in the buildings?
I don't know whether we do, but I generally think generally the policy is that you don't. I mean, I'd be surprised if we did. I don't know the answer, sorry,
Yeah, that's okay.
but I would be
Oh.
surprised if we did.
Well, so this was actually drafted a little bit differently in our current policy, and I chunked it out into 3 different things because I think we want to, whether or not we have petty cash is different from the ongoing issue of collection of cash for field trips, which happens even though it probably shouldn't.
Yes, yeah,
And so I split those 2 things out because even if we don't have petty cash, and even if we discourage cash collection, it may still happen. And so there should still be procedures to make sure that cash is handled properly. So that's drafted in here. And then there's just a report of unaccounted for funds. So we can talk about this more later, but I think that these days in general, with the amount of with the ease of electronic payments, we probably don't, if we're not having petty cash right now, we don't want to leave this in here. We want to get rid of it. And with the availability of procurement cards to the key staff in the buildings. But again, this is something that I want to run by Susan to be sure before we do anything further with this.
Yeah, yeah,
go
but
ahead.
yeah, you're right, because there may be a subset of students who, operate in their family on cash rather than on electronic payment, and so we'd want to be sensitive to that.
Yeah, and even, right, like there's reasons we might want to have cash, but what I don't want to have happen is teachers collecting cash and then leaving it in their desk drawer.
Sure, of course.
Like,
Yeah.
exactly. So that's why we need to handle the cash on school premises, as you're saying, like people may need to operate in cash and we need to be treating it appropriately.
Yeah, yeah, this is good.
If you don't mind keeping on going, Betsy, down to 14. So this wording is exactly the current wording, except I believe I increased the balances. I think they're like 5,000 and 10,000 right now, maybe. I don't know if they're right. Again, this is something I want to check with Susan, but the wording is similar. So MASC has student activity account policy in the student section of policy, but we have it in student activity accounts. And to me, it makes much more sense in finance than it does in students. Because it's about money and not about students. So, and Susan and I both agreed, this thing we did talk about. So, I'm pretty sure this wording, I'm pretty sure I checked and this is the same wording that MASC has, but they have it in a different section, or it's very similar. And I think I left our wording the way we had it. Oh, sorry, one other thing I wanted to just scroll up. On number 3, it did not have this ability of or it was like more challenging to increase the maximum balances. And so basically now it's like it can be increased at the discretion of the superintendent and with notice to the school committee. And that way we don't need to like update policy. We could even consider taking out the dollar amounts altogether and just say establish maximum balances, which are managed at the discretion of the superintendent. That could be like a good way to handle that.
That makes sense if there's going to be another 40 years before this policy gets updated.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we can think about that. And that might be true for a lot of the dollar things that are in here, but anyway, something for us to talk about next time. And then the last section.
I mean, I don't, how would you track what maximum account balances are if you don't have a set figure in there, Andy?
Well,
Like,
because the staff have protocols and guidelines and documents on the back end. This isn't the only thing that they're operating on.
right, but
So
I'm saying what, I mean, are we saying that the school committee should be notified, I don't know, once a year, with beginning of the year or mid-year on all
Maybe.
student activity accounts with their amounts, so we know so we have a sense of what's happening, or is that not like you
I
see
wouldn't worry about it.
okay, because you see the expenses flying through like in the warrant, right?
Right,
They're all
but the student activity accounts, you're seeing those in the budget. These accounts are basically the things that let them like write the checks, like so the principals can write the checks, but that's already baked into the budget. This isn't like
right.
side money.
Right. No, I didn't. No. I wasn't saying it was
Oh,
side.
okay.
No, I was just saying that is that the next level of detail that would be available, like the earlier section where you talked about having the financial quarterly and annual reports available on the district website. So would there be visibility into the activity one?
No, because you don't need it, because basically like the way these work is like, it's basically a cash advance against the money that's been budgeted for them. And after they write their checks, then Jesse, those things we see is so that their accounts get replenished. So basically
it.
think of it like a debit card where they can't spend more than what's in the account. So they're always going to be capped at 10,000 for the elementary school in
Right.
this case. But like if they spend 3,000, a month later, they send their paperwork through to the town, we
Yeah.
approve those transfers and they get re-upped again to 10,000. So it's not like,
Oh, it just
there's
keeps
nothing
getting
exciting
filled in.
here. It's basically just
Yeah.
their maximum balance they can have outstanding without without being able to reconcile.
Oh, okay. So by the end of a fiscal year, like this year, it's about 75 grand total in the budget. So in other words, the different student activity accounts, like at the different schools, let's say, for example, so a Lawrence activity different than a Runkle activity or something counts, so they can write checks. Those all get sort of, you're saying, funneled up to student activity account, and then it gets, expensed out of that budgeted amount, which I said for this year is somewhere, if I recall, about 75 grand or something total. So I'm saying,
This is like the credit card that they can write against.
yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think the more we're talking about this, I really don't think we need to know. Like this
There
is
you
something
go.
on the back end of how they just managed to make it all run smoothly. Just like I don't know what Bella's Pro Card's credit limit is, and that's essentially what we're talking about. And I don't care what her credit limit is because it gets managed in the back end. Just
Yeah.
like every other staff's Pro Card is managed in the back end of the credit limits. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I'm saying that's why I was questioning the number. Like
Yeah.
we really need a number there.
Yeah.
I just think that from time to time, maybe I mean, it's such a small number. It's like such a tiny percentage of the overall budget. Like in the dot something, the dot 2, the dot 3% or something. So like it's, I mean, what notice does the school committee really need on it? I guess that's it. If you're saying it's like managed within the processes, like
I think it is. I think it is.
yeah. So like
Yeah.
I'm saying, I'm not sure we need 3 that much.
I think you're right. In talking through it, I don't think we need it.
Okay.
So let's go on to 15. Unless theoretically that the acts of whatever require us to specify those numbers, and we can just confirm. If we're required to have a limit, like on our books, then we can, but otherwise we can get rid of it. So right now our practice, this one's a little bit different. Right now, if we have a practice, we have scholarships, the district holds scholarship funds. It has many scholarships it gives out. We talked about this in 2022, and I'm bringing it back up again, which is I think that there is community partners such as the Brookline Community Foundation, which also offers, manages and offers scholarships for Brookline High School students, post-secondary scholarships. And I don't think that this is something that the high school staff should manage. It takes up some staff time. And I just think that it's something that we should no longer continue to accept scholarships, and we should let the ones that are not endowed, we should draw down on the funds but not accept more funds. And the ones that are endowed, we should continue to give those out to the extent they still have funds. But when they don't, we don't, because I think this is outside of our core scope of business, and there is other partners and other community organizations that provide this same benefit to high school students.
Were there ever discussions with BCF about whether they'd be willing to take over this work?
I talked about it with them back in 2022. I haven't talked about it with them recently. But it doesn't have to just be BCF, but I can bring it back up to them if the subcommittee is interested in that happening and assessing their interest. We wouldn't necessarily transfer scholarships to them. Like, for example, if we have an endowed scholarship, we don't necessarily need to transfer it, although we could, if a donor wanted an endowed scholarship to be transferred, and that's possible by law. I'm not sure how that works, but we could transfer that.
Yeah, I mean, I was in favor of this then, and I still would be now. How do you feel about it, Jesse?
I think I don't know the history, Andy, but I agree with the fact that to minimize administrative burden, we should not have to do it. The question is, like, where should it be done? Is there a function like this on the town side that accepts, gifts? I know this is a special type called a scholarship and it's for education, but maybe there's a function there we can leverage with, because it's just a question of having the money, quote unquote, like securely placed in the right account so that it can be utilized by the people giving it out.
So the BCF does this and currently there are high school staff who sit on the BCF scholarship committee. And they give out scholarships, I think more than we do, but I could be wrong. I don't know about the latest number. Go ahead, Bella.
So generally, this is a function. I was wondering how obviously scholarships are given, and I was wondering what happens in Brookline. So in most places, it's been taken on by another body.
Yeah.
Yeah, and not managed by the schools. There's all sorts of financial requirements that you have to follow, and making sure everything is above board, no undue influence on selection and all of that. But most places have been taken by another body. So Mariah's alluding that there is another body that's taken this over.
So for now, what I did, if you don't mind just scrolling up a little bit to the top of the page. So the text that you see, that's the intro text to this section, and then the D15.1, that is new that I wrote.
Right.
And then D15.2, like everything below that is the prior policy of how it was going to be handled. Because I think as long as we retain, like if we still retain any scholarships, we need to have our rules such as they are in place. But I also wanted to include that preface. So
I guess what exactly is number 2 in that section? Scholarships that are pay as you go. Is this that we get?
So there's some scholarships which are endowed, and some scholarships essentially, like I'll give one example. I think there's something called there's the Pierce student scholarships that were, I know this because I was the Pierce PTO treasurer. There's the Pierce, I want to say it's called Pierce Best Boy Scholarship and Pierce Best Girl Scholarship. And these were established maybe 100 years ago or so, and they give out $500 a year. And what happens is, and I don't know how they were originally funded, but when I was treasurer, the PTO was writing a check to PSB on an annual basis to cover the next year. So it was basically it was being funded as you go. And so some of the scholarships, I haven't even seen an entire list of the scholarships we give out. I know staff has it, so it's not that it doesn't exist, but some of them are endowed.
Yep.
And as we've heard, there's at least one that has millions of dollars in it, and that's why we're going to the AGO to see how to redirect those funds. And some
Yes.
of them are pay as you go. And so even if we were to, for example, not carry forward the pay as you go ones, which is what do I allude to, they might still have a balance. Like say there's something that's pay as you go, it has $1,000 and we give out $500 a year. Well, we give out 2 more years of it, but then we just don't allow any more plus ups of it. So the ones that aren't endowed, like will very quickly conclude, and then the ones that are may drag out.
So what opportunity will we have for the first type then after we stop accepting it?
We won't. Someone would go to BCF instead and choose to establish a scholarship through the Brookline Community Foundation in support of Brookline High School students, which already occurs. Again, people essentially have 2 choices, or maybe even more than 2, but 2 that I know of right now.
The donor preferred to not have the balance of work. So number 3 is talking at the end there about just the drainage. In other words, that as we drain out the asset, if they don't want to have the balance awarded by PSB, give it to some other organization that will then pay
Would
it out.
award it separately, right?
They'll award it separately. Okay. All
As
right.
allowed by law. Again, like there's, as Bella alluded to, this is very complicated and there's a lot of rules around
Yeah.
it. So we want to be flexible, I think, and honor people's wishes within the constraints of the law.
Yeah, I was struck as I read it the other day with the word happily in there. That's sort of cute, but I mean, in the policy, do we really need to say that we're happy about it? I mean, we're just saying we'll work with anybody,
Sure.
It's a smiley kind of thing, so that's cool.
I'm a smiley kind of person.
Hi.
So that's it. That's the end of the policy.
Thanks, Mariah. This right now, I think it has a level of clarity and relevance that I'm not accustomed to seeing in a PSP policy. So it seems great.
You can thank MASC for that.
Yeah.
No, it's true.
So I guess from your description of your process in putting this together, we can kind of assume at this point that sort of everything from the old policy that needs to be incorporated, you've kind of considered it and have done it if you thought it made sense, right?
Yeah.
So like we basically, we can just start working from this from now on. We do not need to go back to the previous policy or to MASC or anything else. This supersedes everything before it.
You could if you want to, but I personally think that everything that I thought was worth carrying forwards, I did.
Yeah.
And I also don't think, like, the words might have changed, but the headings, like the PSB policy has very different words in it because they're old and out of date, but the concepts are carried forward here, like the headings wise.
Yeah.
The thing that
Yeah.
I haven't done that I think is really important is having the chance to sit down with Susan and say, Susan, are there any policies that you feel you need to be an effective finance leader, that you need like the school committee to weigh in on or to provide, and that are missing? And I haven't had that chance yet because of everything going on.
Yeah, sure. I was going to ask you in D7 or 8. Well, I have 2 different questions, I guess. On D8, is there anything we learned from the CLA audit that the town is going to be looking for us to put in our financial audit section that could be helpful, or have we already covered it? If we covered it, then fine. I'm just making sure that we can that if we get asked that question, or if they look at it and say, well, did you remember to put in X or Y or X and Y based on the CLA audit as it referred to fiscal policy? Is it covered?
I feel it is.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and I would just go to, if you don't mind, Betsy, scrolling to D8. The audit section refers
There you
to,
go.
you can see some of the requirements, like, for example, it alludes to the end of year report that goes to DESE, et cetera. So, and this is provided by MASC, but I think it is,
Yep.
I mean, certainly we'll take feedback from everyone along the way, but I don't think it's substantial.
But this is pretty. No, this is pretty reasonable. Yeah. Oh, now what was my second question? Hold on, what was that? And can we go back to the list of the titles? Maybe that'll remind me of the second question. I'm sorry, I had 2 at the time. One was the CLA thing, and then Oh, yeah. Susan mentioned yesterday, in the fiscal report, Mariah, about the 450,000 for health services that were actually in two accounts, and that, they sort of discovered it afterwards. I mean, these things happen and stuff like that. I guess it was on my, I was reminded of it as we went through 7. Um, is that more like a process glitch versus it's not a policy thing that I mean, I guess it's a process thing to find a way to run through the budget like last year in the preparation so that could have been caught so that we didn't like get surprised halfway through, the next year about something that happened then, right? That kind of a thing. Like what kind of checks and balances could be in, I don't know. I mean, just.
I don't think that's a policy thing, but
Okay.
Bella, do you think that there's anything in policy that would address that? To me, that's that's within the process, not the policy.
Okay.
But I don't know, I will leave it to Bella.
I'm sorry, I was multitasking. What did Jesse say?
Well, what I asked was the situation that Susan brought to the committee's attention yesterday, I guess, about the health services line item for 450,000 last year that was actually put in by 2 different departments, but it was a duplicate. And so now
Yeah,
so I'm just saying, my question was like, do we have a policy of checking for potential glitches like that, looking for amounts that are exactly the same in 2 places or 4 places that sort of helps us because we're all human and, it's a big system we're working with to potentially identify something we can then check and say, oh, no, that's fine,
Yeah.
that's fine,
honestly, I think that that was human error, and I don't know if you create a. I mean, you should be. It's practice that you should be double checking everything anyway. So a policy saying that you're going to double check all the lines.
Yeah, that's okay, fine.
You should be. So I'm going to say that that was just. I know you can like human error. Maybe, seeing the number, seeing the exact number, it didn't compute that it went in twice as opposed to being that is the number that
Okay.
should be there. Yeah.
I was just trying to use it as a learning opportunity, I'm not
Mhm.
criticizing anything. And again,
No,
it's
I
all
would say that
people.
was human error.
Okay,
And,
okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
So what do
I
you
think that
do?
that's also kind of covered under D7, the fiscal accounting and reporting. So, I mean, it basically just says, and this is one of the things that I like, this is one of my learnings from the past year. Bella, do you mind going to that? Or Bella, Betsy, do you mind going to D7? Just
The
this
DG.
idea of this.
What
like,
number,
the super-
Mariah? I'm sorry.
7, the fiscal
7,
accounting and
okay, yep.
reporting. It basically says the superintendent is responsible because you're the chief staff member, right? At the end of the day, you're the executive. And all of those things that we're sort of alluding to is all included within that. So
Yeah, it's in the first paragraph, like,
Yeah.
effective internal controls to assure effectiveness and efficiency.
exactly.
It doesn't, the first one doesn't talk about accuracy. It just basically says effectiveness and efficiency, but that would relate in a way, I guess, to accuracy. Okay. All right.
Yeah, so I think that to me, it sort of ties it out about the responsibilities. And again, it goes to this idea of it doesn't need to be in the school committee policy. The school committee sort of designates that it's a staff responsibility and moves on.
Yep.
So what do you think are appropriate next steps and timeline for finishing this up? So, we have at most probably 3 more policy meetings before the current school committee becomes the next school committee.
Yes.
So before we get to that, Bella, can I ask if there's anything like a huge omission of any sort that you think should be in here but based on what you heard tonight?
No, but could I look one more time? Can
Of
I look
course.
through it one more time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that the next step would be
And it was helpful for me to hear you present it.
good. Okay, yeah, because it's hard to read 24 pages cold. So I think the next step would be to get in front of Susan to have her check. Bella, is that something that you can help me?
So I do have her focused on being prepared for next Thursday night.
Mhm.
And I will ask her, you know, what her capacity is. When would you like her to review?
Well, when is our next one of these meetings? Is it
In
I think-
February.
February 19th? No.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think we're going to
no, I
be
thought it was-
scheduling that because of I think one of us has a conflict
Yeah,
on
I
the
do.
previously scheduled date, but we'll find another date in February.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd appreciate. Yeah, I'd
Because what I
appreciate.
think might make sense is let's wait until the budget book comes out so that like we're not trying to distract
Okay.
Susan through the next critical 2 to 3 weeks. Does that make sense? And then get her attention and then bring the next draft back that she's also looked at to the committee and to the subcommittee. And then hopefully at that point, we would be ready to vote it to go ahead to full committee. Does
Okay.
that seem efficient?
Yeah, and
That-
in a real pinch, we don't necessarily have to vote to send it to full school committee just to have them look at it, right? Like if the school committee
Right.
chair wants to bring it up, like she can do that.
Mhm.
So it kind of depends on how extensive maybe the changes are that Susan might want. Right?
Well, should we make a motion of something like, barring, like basically a motion to advance this to full school committee pending review by Susan and, any changes made?
Well, and Bella was going to review it as well, so yeah, both.
Yes, right,
Yeah, so
exactly.
did you say the next policy, this isn't, you weren't planning to look at this until February?
10th is
10th.
the current
Okay.
date. That the time or the day may move a little bit,
Okay,
but
Let me
yeah,
just-
that's our next meeting.
great. Let me feel her out, because I didn't feel it was, I don't think it's gonna be big, huge changes, big, huge additions.
Yeah, I mean, if she could, if she's able to just like sort of glance
Yeah.
at it quickly and just right away have a sense of how extensive might be the changes she would want. And if she knows, if she can see that they would be minor, then we can sort of confidently plan to move this ahead to school committee.
I think it would be easier, just like Bella said, it was easier when I talked you all through it. I think it would be easier rather than asking her to read it cold, to talk her through it as well. And so that's why I'd rather, Bella, if we could set a time to like meet for an hour or two to just talk through it. And even if like I just get, if there's major headings, we add in those headings and then we can fill in the text like after the fact. But knowing if there's big gaps would be a huge help, as
Right.
opposed to thinking, okay, we're sort of ready to move ahead.
I mean, 210 might be very doable.
Okay, so do we leave it with you to
Yeah.
check in with her? Okay,
Yeah,
Okay, so the goal would in fact be to at least have some feedback on this from Susan before the next policy meeting. And then if there's practically no feedback, then it doesn't actually have to come back here. It could go to school committee. If there is feedback, then we could workshop it here.
right.
Yeah, that makes
think-
sense.
I think we can do it. This is recorded, isn't it?
Yes.
So I could just suggest that she watch the recording, Mariah.
okay,
Yeah.
that's fine too. Whatever's
And
helpful.
then-
I
and
just want to
then-
be helpful to get it through.
I would
before
say
the
first the recording, view the recording, and then talk with you.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'm not sure we need to take a vote, right? We don't know exactly where things will lie in early February, but I think, like I said, the school committee chair can just ask the committee as a whole to take a look if it seems appropriate at that stage.
Okay. Thank you for letting me go first.
Oh, thanks. So thanks for the work on this. I'm kind of enjoying having such a clear, coherent policy to look at. Okay, so the next item on the agenda was instructional materials, and this was a draft that Jesse had put together. You want to talk us through
Sure.
the motivation and the changes that you made to the existing policy?
Sure. So the backstory on this one is that last May, I think at the last meeting of our last session, I had brought up a resolution about the MTA's instructional material support that was on their website post October 7th, 2023. And at the time, we did not discuss instructional materials as what the policy was in terms of public schools of Brookline. We just sort of didn't talk about it. It just didn't come up in the discussion. And Brookline being the first district in the state to pass such a resolution, what I saw was that the next 4 districts that passed the resolution also several of them included a link to their instructional materials policy that was primarily related to the MASC's model policy, with some changes in different districts, to customize it, but essentially had this sort of similar themes. And then looking back at our instructional materials policy, I took sort of a mental note, if I'm recalling correctly, Andy, to take a look at our instructional materials policy and to see how it aligned with the MASC's actually. So I'll start by saying that in the current Public School of Brookline's policy manual, the instructional materials section is part of a very long section, like on a curriculum and curriculum development. The MASC's model policies, and ones that are in a huge number of the districts that have their online policies hosted by MASC, is considerable. It's also in a section called Section I on instruction. But the level of detail around instructional materials in the current PSB policy is much different, being very dated, I think from around the 90s, than actually, what does it say in there? Yeah, voted 94. No, you can leave it where it is, Betsy. It was up in the deleted right section notes or something. But in any case, so this is not the scope of this, Andy, is not an entire disquisition on curriculum and curriculum development. Okay, just so we're sure. The section on instruction in the MASC, Section I, has about 40 policies in it, of which a whole bunch have to do with curriculum and curriculum development. That's not what this instructional materials one is. It might be helpful if we, as we have this discussion, to get both you and Mariah Andy's view on what the scope of instructional materials are. But this is trying to place a clear and, I think, relatively concise description of our policy on instructional materials that support, the curriculum that the district maintains. And so the parts that got taken out are shown in the, mostly deleted section there on the right. The existing policy talks about workbooks, and it has a lot to say about students have to be given a workbook, and there are certain pages that have to be filled out, and make sure they have pencils and all these different things, or use separate sheets of paper. It harkens back to an area that, a time that is, for the most part, bygone at this point. So what I did is I repurposed the purpose, because we're talking about not instruction and workbooks, but the purpose of the instructional materials that the district provides in the curriculum. Again, it assumes the curriculum is covered in other parts of the policy, is to support and enhance student learning by providing the content and tools for effective education. And then how these materials selected is delegated to the district's professional staff. And the process is a responsibility, again, of the superintendent or his or her designee. And the 2 parameters that are from the MASC policy, again, I say it's like their template policy, but this has been adopted by 80 or 90 districts. So it's like a sort of a standard policy that if there's a major adoption or revision, in terms of the materials, like we did for literacy last year, it should be described as part of the budget process, which of course we did. And that in order to give the superintendent some extended leeway, she or he may authorize materials for a trial use, not to exceed 2 school years. Again, we can, discuss that. And then materials approved by the superintendent should only be restricted to the classes where they've been specified and not moved out into other areas if they're not particularly appropriate. And then the third section has to do with where does the school committee go in here. And so the responsibility, legally is one of the 3 main things school committee does is to, select and purchase the voting for that, like we did with literacy, for example, rests with the school committee. And we believe these materials should be available to each student and teacher, which is, sort of equitable way of doing it, of course, and furnished by the school committee subject to budgetary constraints. So the understanding might be there that if there was some constraint which did not provide it for some reason, that we'd have to deal with it.
I wondered about that sentence. First of all, Jesse, I like the way you split things up to make it clear on the one hand that the legal responsibility rests with the school committee, but that at the same time, that's the task of actually selecting curriculum is delegated to staff. I thought that one of the purposes of revising this policy was to make that division very clear, right, to the community.
I don't understand that though. I find that confusing. I appreciate what it is, but I don't quite understand about when it says the legal responsibility. Is that, first off, who says it's the legal responsibility? I don't understand what the reference, what's the legal reference for us saying it's the responsibility rests with the school committee?
Isn't approving curriculum one of the school committee's sort of statutory?
Yes, but selecting instructional materials is not the same thing as approving curriculum. So that's what I'm confused about, where that one sentence comes from. But then it's more like the process of selecting these materials is or it says the task of selecting is delegated, the process is the responsibility within the following parameters. I'm confused about what the difference is between a process of selecting and a responsibility of selecting. To me, that says literally, mechanically, staff are responsible for clicking a purchase order, clicking a purchase button, but that the school committee. So again, but I'm not sure.
Well, I wonder if we could just go to the statutory language for the legal responsibility piece, right? However it's worded.
Okay, yeah, sure.
It's something to do with curriculum, right? But I'm sure it doesn't say selecting and purchasing instructional materials. Right. So whatever language the legislature used to
the MASC's wording verbatim, I just pulled it up, is the task of selecting instructional materials for programs will be delegated to the professional staff of the school district. So that's really
what is the legal responsibility of the school committee? Because the delegation to me makes more clear, but when it says the legal responsibility, that's where I'm getting confused by legal responsibility.
Let's look in this statute and
we'll look.
If that language works, then use that.
No, I'm making a note about that. Yeah. Well, let me make a note. Thank you. All right. Yeah. So Andy, you're saying basically we'll find the legal wording and smith it back to that, or make it that. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely. I think Mariah's point is very well taken.
Yes. Yeah, okay.
What I appreciated was you were trying to delineate it. It just wasn't clear yet in my mind, but I agree with the effort.
Okay, great. So I'll make sure right after the role of the school committee, that first sentence, that we straighten that out. Toot sweet. Okay.
I'm not understanding the purpose of the following sentence, though, that the school committee believes that such materials must be available to each student and teachers, and that will furnish it subject to budgetary constraints. It kind of goes without saying, or why do we need to say that?
I think we could take it out. You're right.
Okay, and then just go straight to.
Well, actually, I would say so.
The superintendent.
There's a whole bunch of this is a ongoing conversation and has been. I want to say it was the 2018 override that there was discussion about, for example, all the materials that are supposed to be used in schools should be provided through by the municipality. I guess I'll say by tax.
Would this get us involved in having to provide like a Chromebook or something for every student?
Well, I guess the question is, like, does it mean much if we say subject to budgetary constraints? Like, what does it mean when we say we're providing the materials subject to, I don't know, it just gets into this whole question of like, should parents and caregivers be having to send bags filled with markers and tissues and all those other things that are often requested of them, and binders and all of the other things that they're expected to request?
Well, is that, do you really want to have that in a policy? Because it exists informally today, right?
I just don't know what this sentence adds, because
Interesting.
obviously we're going to provide
There
them
seems to be
subject to
general
budgetary
agreement to remove the
constraints.
sentence. Maybe
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just, yeah, so the sentence actually is in the MASC template, so we could take it out. I mean, that's not a problem. I mean, I have no, I'm
Yeah.
not wedded to the template. So
I
say if you
just
want,
don't think it, like, it's okay to keep it, it just doesn't really, you know.
I mean, I'm not sure that the budgetary, you know, interesting you mentioned that, Mariah, because I would not have initially connected the subject of budgetary constraints with the ongoing long, many-year practice of having kids have to, you know, the teacher sending out an email or some parent saying, I'd like you to bring the following things the first day of school. And then there's like this mountain of stuff that shows up. So, and you're right, some of those are potentially related to instructional materials. I see it, you know, the binders and the crayons, I mean, I don't know, that, you know, and the markers and the erasers and pencils. Yeah, I mean, okay. I mean,
They're instructional materials, right? They're
yeah,
not,
so
like-
that's
yeah.
that's part of our definition of what instructional materials are. So I'm gonna
And
put
in 2018, there was something like, there was a gap identified of like $800,000 in materials that if we were to actually fully fund this stuff, I don't know if it was 800, it was hundreds of thousands.
wow.
And I can't remember the exact amount now, but it was a large hundreds of thousands, and it was ultimately stripped out of the override request for, so I'm just saying there is a history
Okay.
here, and
Okay,
you
good to know.
there's a gap, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so if we think, yeah, okay, so that first paragraph I'll work on. Okay, and then there's a list of criteria that because the school committee is going to approve it, I wrote it in the other way, that saying the school committee is going to look over these. I think we zoomed on too quickly here or something like that. Did we jump down a lot all of a sudden, Betsy? Could you slide back up again a little bit? Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what we did right there.
yeah, correlation to objectives. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, okay, Betsy. Yeah, this is perfect. So there was a reference in our existing policy that the materials will reflect the student learning goals and objectives as described in the learning expectations. That's my question mark. I don't know what that is. That's
I don't think we have those anymore. We had.
Yeah,
think that
I've never
learning
heard of it.
Expectations got, I think the state put out the curriculum frameworks, because Brookline, I'm pretty sure, maybe this is a question for Bella or Robin, but
Yep.
I'm pretty sure we used to have our own learning expectations that were subsumed or made irrelevant by the state curriculum frameworks.
Well, that's listed here, but if they're portions of this that can be removed, I didn't pass this by Bella and Robin first. This is the first time like we're really talking about it, but that's a good idea, Mariah, to have them look through this paragraph and clean up the ones that don't really apply. Yes.
I'm sorry, I don't think Robin looked it over.
Okay.
I'm just
No,
texting.
not yet. That's right. No,
Yeah,
you're right. You're right.
okay.
I haven't. No, that's going to happen. I'll clean up a few things and I'll send it to you and her, and then yeah, that would be the next step. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. We're not. I mean, no. We're not saying that like she didn't look at it or anything. No. She hasn't looked at it because we haven't asked yet, which
So
is
can
fine.
we just zoom this one out to say like it'll reflect the student learning goals and objectives in the like district and state, appropriate district and state documents or something?
Yes, that's fine. Sure.
Okay,
Okay, I'll do that.
thanks. That way
Okay.
we don't have to get into it.
Yeah, perfect. And that's similar, I guess, to like, the quality one, Mariah, where materials will reflect the state and local standards, real life connections, contain concepts current and accurate, and contain opportunities for critical thinking and problem solving. And then specifically, then there's a couple of items here that come from the template. This little section was already in our existing one. So if we just go down a little bit, I think that's the Betsy, the last section before. Yeah, these six items come from right. So, Mariah, you'll notice that I deleted on the right-hand side, material selection and evaluation revised policy. And it talks about this legal responsibility part. That used to be down there. I moved a piece of it up higher. That's why I talked about it there. But I wanted to keep the flow a little bit different than it is in the existing policy. But anyway, we'd already talked about that. We're going to make the changes there. So what good. All right. So the 6 that MASC has in there that I dropped in here is present a balanced view of international, national, local issues.
Is balanced views in the MASC language?
Excuse me?
Is balanced views in the MASC language?
Yes, it is.
That phrase worries me because that's a phrase that, for example, anti-vax folks or climate change deniers can latch onto to insist that we have to present a balanced view of the opposing sides in certain disputes. So that anyway, that language.
I agree. The balance bit of it, like sometimes the two sides don't really have.
They're not equal.
They're not equal. They don't carry the same weight exactly.
Yes. So we've seen how that phrase actually gets abused in political discourse. So yeah,
this is why we're discussing it here.
Yes.
Thank you for bringing it up. We'll take it out. No, exactly. Okay.
So I was thinking about a word to replace it with, and I had it in my head, and then I forgot it. But I'm gonna hopefully remember it.
Okay, we'll talk about it. We'll move on and talk about something else, and it'll pop in. That's how it normally works.
Exactly.
And then just interrupt, please. Yeah, but we'll have to. That's a tricky word, but we'll come up with something. The second one is provide materials that stimulate growth in factual knowledge, literary appreciation, aesthetic and ethical values, help students develop abilities in critical reading and thinking, help develop and foster an appreciation of diversity and development in the U.S. and throughout the world, provide for all students an effective basic education that does not discriminate on all the different levels and areas. I didn't mean to say levels. I mean, in all the different categories, I guess, a better word. And allow sufficient flexibility to meet the special needs of individual students and groups of students. So these are essentially word for word from the MASC ones, and again, used by these other districts that had looked at the resolution last May, as well as many that I go through often through the policy website and look at all the ones from Abington to, I don't know, Wellesley, whatever, the whole alphabet, look at each of their instructional materials policies. Very many are, vast majority are like this.
So this list seems to, so we did have a short paragraph that has been deleted, which was materials will reflect Brookline's philosophy of inclusion, alternative approaches for various skill levels, and where appropriate, factual information on diverse cultures and ethnicities and non-sexist perspectives. So that paragraph seems to have been removed.
Yeah, I removed it.
Do you think that this list actually covers all of those things? Like, we now no longer have the word inclusion, for example, and the non-sexist perspectives, maybe not, right? So,
well, I think on 5 is basically saying we're not going to discriminate on any basis, and so I think that covers the ethnicities and non-sexist perspectives, and I think the diverse cultural part is covered in 4, appreciation of cultural diversity. I mean, I don't think we have to, express it more broadly than that. I think cultural diversity is what it is. All cultures and in all their richness are appreciated. So that's why I removed it from here as a policy.
And then the differentiation, I guess, survives in point 6 here.
Yes.
The idea was, right, that the material should allow for differentiation for
students with students who have differing needs. That's correct.
What do you think, Mariah?
For number 5, why does it specify physical disabilities as opposed to disabilities generally?
We can take it out. Again, that's the word MASC is using, so it appears in like dozens and dozens and dozens of policies. But yeah, we can take that out. Sure, of course.
Right. So I think
I'll take a note on that. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, I mean, we know about the profile of our students, and it's not like disability comes in many forms.
Of course. Yeah, well, I'm well aware. Because I was just utilizing their template there, so
sure.
I'll switch it up. Totally.
I'll just be interested to hear. I mean, I think that it's I don't have a problem with the list in general. One thing that I think is weird formatting wise, if you don't mind, Betsy, just scrolling up a little bit. is that a little bit more. The thing that is here, like the state and local standards, real life connections, etc. To me, that all ties to, like, that should be a bullet too. I'm not sure why we wouldn't say materials, like, I don't know why we have 6 things, because it implies, the numbers imply that they're like an expansion of what's written there, and they're not
I hear,
entirely.
yeah. Oh, I hear what you're saying. So I
Yeah.
hadn't thought about it that way. So we could actually move them over and give them like a title and
Yeah, like some of them are
um,
duplicative, like will contain concepts that are current and accurate is sort of a duplicate of number 1 and 2 below. But reflecting state and local standards, containing opportunities for critical thinking and problem solving are not represented in the bullets or in the numbers at all.
in
So
the
I think it's
numbers,
an
yeah,
opportunity
okay.
to consolidate it into,
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do that. Okay, let me make a note on that. Yeah, that's a good idea.
I think that, like, I guess I really like that first sentence, and some of it gets lost in the numbers, and I don't want people to start to obsess over what's in 1 through 6 and miss the really great things that are in that first sentence.
Which
Right.
sentence?
Like
It's
having the opportunity for critical
That one.
thinking and problem solving, like, yes, our
Yeah.
materials should have that, but
That's
then it
right.
says, like, the next thing says specifically the material shall contain the following criteria. And I don't think there's anything about problem solving or critical thinking in 1 through 6. And to me, those are like, that's really
Actually,
important.
number 3, yeah, number 3 is Mariah. That's
Is it?
exactly
Do you
what it
mind
says.
scrolling down, Betsy, a little bit so I can see it?
Like half and half if you get, oh, it switches a page. I'm sorry. Yes, 3 is exactly that.
Yeah, you're right. It's in critical thinking anyway, but it doesn't talk about problem solving. Anyway, I just think that, like,
All right, you
there's
know
some
what? Let
nice
me,
stuff that could
yeah,
be
I hear you.
brought out. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if it's brought, I think if we, since we like that first sentence, and I can take some of the, if we promote them to bullet items at the same level, they all end up with the same importance and it covers them all. And I'll look to take out any duplicates.
Can I
Yeah.
make just one wording suggestion on the last one? Instead of they must allow sufficient flexibility, can we say something more like include sufficient flexibility or provide? Actually, better is provide. So like it's not just that the curriculum can be adapted if the teacher works really hard, but that it actually incorporates differentiation opportunities.
That makes sense.
This is just from my own struggles trying to differentiate using a curriculum that really is, allows it on some level, but doesn't exactly promote it.
Okay, for differentiation. Okay, if I have any questions about it as I'm doing it, I'll just ping you separately. And you can give me a phrase or something like that. As long as I'm not.
Actually, I would like to add something to this too, which is
Yeah,
when
sure.
we talk about these things, we don't talk about, to Andy's point, we don't talk about the materials in terms of their teachability. So to the extent we can encourage, if we're talking about all the things we want to see, materials that really work for educators to educate would be a nice thing.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I like it. Yep.
Like to Andy's point, it shouldn't be like pulling teeth to be able to
Right.
use this stuff to teach, right? It should be like
Well,
high
we would say,
quality.
yeah, but we would say that yeah, but that, okay, so that would relate back to what we said at the top about professional staff's responsibilities are to, curate and choose instructional materials eventually at some level approved by the school committee, but still those kind of materials that enable our educators to educate, right? So I'm saying, if they picked something that was like a dud, so basically they've made, they could have made a better decision, let's say. So we could say it again here, but then we're really putting into question what they've decided or promoted. So yeah, okay. Yeah, I hear you. All right, yeah, I took a note on that one too. Okay, and then the last sentence, the last paragraph is what's still in there. In our original existing instructional materials policy about reconsideration. It's in those words, and that basically that parents, guardians, caregivers can make a request that in some instructional materials should be removed or restricted, and if they have an issue, they would to the superintendent. It doesn't really say it in that way, but it's by implication will be reviewed by the superintendent or designee. So the superintendent would would be the one they'd reach out to in a formal written request. And then it would be up to the superintendent to do the review, and any decisions that the complainant or requester are concerned about or want to take further could be appealed to the school committee.
Is this
It
for
could-
their own student or for the district as a whole? This reads like it's the district as a whole.
It could be for the district as a whole, yeah. I
Well-
mean, it could be any, I mean, look, if someone, I mean, any instructional materials I mean, I assume that's the existing policy, right? So that if someone, I don't know, fish tank, literacy program, if somebody felt that there should be it should be removed even after we voted it and the whole thing, they could write a letter. All this says is you can write a letter to the superintendent and say, hey, here are the reasons I'm upset with the, literacy program, or I'm upset with a STEM program, or whatever it might be. And the materials that are being provided to a group of students or district wide for reasons X, Y, Z, A, B, C, and there's a process. It's not saying, Mariah, that it's not adding anything new that we don't already have today. I'm not sure.
Well, I
Like-
guess I don't like the last sentence then, because to me,
Oh, okay.
right, like the idea that the school, if materials are like specific materials that we're talking about are actually under the jurisdiction of the superintendent, then it
Yeah.
doesn't go to the full school committee for an appeal. The superintendent's decision is the decision.
So this might harken back to the 70s or so when this, when some of these revisions were made, or 2005. So yeah, if that's no longer really the way we want to approach requests, then we could take it out. I guess on the other hand, again, just thinking openly for a moment here, what happens when let's say a group of parents were to write a letter about, I don't know, something in social studies, and they write to the superintendent, and they don't get an answer, which could happen, or they get an answer they're not happy with. So what's their recourse? So maybe this is what that
They
was.
can complain to us and then we address it in our annual review of the superintendent, just like many other things. Many decisions don't go up
Oh,
to us,
okay.
right? Like there's basically, we evaluate the superintendent annually
Right.
and on many dimensions that we don't have final appeal on, right? It's just our job
Okay.
to supervise the superintendent.
So are you recommending we just strike the last sentence completely?
Yes.
Can we ask our superintendent, like, whether this piece
Does
of
it happen?
like, how does this ever play out? Like, do you actually receive formal written requests to remove items? And yeah.
No, don't. So usually the education program has been vetted and approved. What parents can do is say they don't want to they can pull their child from participation in a
I
particular
see.
part of the program, but they don't, that's how it generally works.
Because I feel like
But the
not
program's
just
been developed and vetted and approved, and that's what we're offering.
But Bella, I think that
Yeah.
like sometimes though there's materials that you may not have been aware of or whatever. And so it makes sense for a parent to say, dear Superintendent Wong, this was provided in like my student's class today, or, and the teacher says they're going to keep using. I have specific examples in my mind that I'm not illustrating this with. And once it's elevated to your attention, you might decide, right? Like, okay, you're right. This one comes out or whatever it is, because you're reading it, you're getting the details and it wasn't flagged before. I agree with you that what this is missing is any sort of, which I think is even Supreme Court mandated now, right? This idea that,
Yeah, so then there's case law around specific things.
yeah,
But generally speaking, people don't, I think maybe because Jesse said, fish tank, and I'm like, well, no, we probably wouldn't reevaluate fish tank at this point. But in the individual pieces of material, you're right, there's case law about how we're supposed to respond to that.
right, for individuals. I don't think there's anything weird with having, like, people are going to do it anyway. It's okay. It's interesting to me though that the header is reconsideration and the wording in the text itself talks about removing and restricting. So I guess I would prefer that it be made by individuals, because it could be someone in the community to reconsider use of instructional materials, and it's okay for the district to hear them out, and then you just
Yeah.
say, oh, well, we'll look at it, and you make a decision, and that's that.
But do you think
Right,
that
or-
you need a piece of the policy that says sort of that talks about it? As you said, Mariah, people are going to do it anyway, right? And it's handled by the superintendent the way the superintendent handles anything that comes to her. So
I think it's helpful to clarify that it is the superintendent or their designee's responsibility. Like,
Yeah, I
this is
think
not
if the
something to
if
be
the purpose is to say,
adjudicated
like,
at school committee comment.
yeah.
time.
right.
That's true. If we can write this partly to make it clear that, like, the school committee is not your first port of call. Like,
Exactly.
Right. I
This
agree.
falls on the operations side of the house,
Yeah.
not the school committee side of the house. That's why I would
Right.
like to keep it in there. But I do think there's
Yes.
something, there is a, and I want to say that, like, case law, I think that Kathleen even sent out the email to the district earlier this year about whatever the current law is about opting out. There's some sort of specific opt-out, instructional
Yes.
material opt-out language now. So
Are you bringing that up so that we should consider?
I guess what I'm
referring to it?
saying is like something like saying, individual instructional material, opt-out instructions will be provided by the district to parents and guardians and caregivers annually. Just that.
Okay.
we just have to make sure to do this in a way that doesn't put an undue burden on the superintendent, right? And make it seem like
Right.
they need to respond in a certain way to every,
Well,
to everything.
I guess what we're doing is I like the idea of taking the school committee out of the paragraph, of course, and I think it makes a lot of sense logically. I think having I think I can reword the heading rather than reconsideration to something smoother. Again, this was in our policy from 40 years ago, Andy, and then reword the sentencing in there just to provide people an outlet that says, our policy is that if you're concerned about an instructional material piece, here's what we're suggesting, or you have yes, it's true. You said that they're going to do it anyway, but I think to have in the policy a sentence or so that just says, if you are concerned, the opt-in, opt-out for sure I'll put in, and that there is a pathway that you can make these requests and to the superintendent for follow-up. That's it. I mean, that we'll take the rest of it out. Unless we just wanted to talk about the new opt-out option and just replace the entire paragraph with the opt-out thing and take everything else out. But it seemed to me like Mariah was saying that having in the policy not the process, but just that the opportunity exists. That if given all the elements that we've provided above, if a parent just feels that there's something amiss, that that we're not closing the door on them, that the policy itself explains and exhibits an openness to hear from a parent or
Or anyone, a community member,
Yeah, community
whoever,
member.
right? Like, yeah.
Do you think parent or guardian is too narrow? I was going to say,
Yes.
okay, I'll change it. Okay. Yeah, so let me change that whole thing, and I'll look back for Kathleen's thing about the opt-out, or just find it
I
online.
don't know if you would have seen it because,
Oh,
yeah.
could have predated me.
Well, no, you wouldn't have gotten it because you're not a parent or guardian.
I am
Are
not.
you?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
No, I'm not.
Okay, it's now 6:31.
Yes, okay, so I think we
we've
covered both.
gotten to the end, yeah.
Yeah, this word, no, this. I mean, I sincerely appreciate all the input and feedback, Andy.
Yeah, thank you for doing this revision. Yeah, so what do we think next steps are in this case? So, we've discussed some revisions which are kind of on the level of wording, right? They're not big and structural.
Right. So I'll redo it and send it back out within the next well, on top of the RSA, yeah, within the next week. I mean, we're not meeting until around the 10th. So like this month, I'll get it back to you. I mean, what's it, 15th today? Yeah. So in the next couple of days, I will send it. I'm allowed to send it out to the two of you. It's not an OML issue. We're not discussing it. I'm just providing you another copy. Is that
Right, I think it's fine if you just incorporate our discussion, make a new document, send it out to us and we just don't reply.
That's correct. Okay, so I will do that within the next, what's today, Thursday night already? Yeah, within the next 3 to 5 days, you'll have it.
Oh, thank you.
Early next week. Yeah, no problem. Thank you very much. Okay,
So new business. Would anyone like to raise new business?
No,
no.
All right.
I
In
would
that
like to go
case,
home.
the meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Thanks to all of you who attended.
Thank you. Take care. Good night.